Hey, good morning, Chavra. Today is the 22nd day of Kislev, and we begin chapter 1 in the Tanya. Beautiful. So, even though, unfortunately, we missed the last couple of days, and we're going to try to catch up, but the last few days was more approbations and compilers forward. Now we begin chapter 1 of Tanya, and Tanya begins with various questions attempting to define the identity of a tzaddik. Also, a rasha and a beinoni. What does that mean? What do these things mean? It's not what you might think. In today's lesson, proof that the beinoni, the intermediate, is actually more like a tzaddik in his performance of mitzvahs, for even one sin would deem him a rasha. Perek Aleph, chapter 1. Tanya b'sei perek gimel denida mashpin oisai tzaddik alti rasha. We learned in the end of chapter 3 that the neshama takes on a promise, an oath. And before Yid is born, he's given an oath to take in heaven that he has to be a tzaddik and not be wicked. And even if the whole world, based on your actions, tells you that you're righteous, you know the truth. We know the truth, what goes on. Everyone says, oh, you're such a good guy. This guy's incredible. We know the truth, that you could do a lot better. How is this possible? Why should a person look at himself like he's not a tzaddik? If we see that we've learned in Mishnahs, don't be wicked, even in your own estimation. So how then can we say that an oath is administered to the neshama, that it regards itself as wicked? When clearly in the Mishnah, it says not to regard yourself as wicked. So which one is it? How are we supposed to view ourselves? Even though we know the truth. That however many accolades people give us, we still have a lot of work to do, right? That's normal. And furthermore, if a person considers himself wicked, he's going to be pretty miserable about it. And he will not be able to serve Hashem with joy and with a content heart. So even if his heart, even if you could say that he's not miserable, but he's not grieved, even if you're going to say that he's not grieved by this self-appraisal, he can look at himself and say, even though I promised to be a tzaddik, I'm still not living up to my potential, and he might not be miserable, but he's going to be maybe stagnant or just cold. However, the above matter will be more clearly understood after we break down what does it mean to be a tzaddik or a rasha or a beinoni, as we'll get to. We find the Gemara 5 different levels, generally speaking. Tzaddik v'tovloi, a righteous man who prospers, a tzaddik with only good. Tzaddik v'raloi, a tzaddik who has some vestige of evil still left within him. Then we have a rasha v'tovloi, a wicked man, who also, once in a while, you find a little sliver, a glimmer of hope. And then we have rasha v'raloi, somebody who's totally gone. And finally, we have the beinoni. The beinoni is, as we'll explain, is the intermediate guy. Down the middle, not super great, but certainly not evil. A A tzaddik, v'toiv lo, a tzaddik with good in him means he completely conquered his any negativity that's in his life, any selfishness whatsoever. But tzaddik v'raloi, tzaddik vein she'ena gamur. The tzaddik that has some kind of evil or incompleteness about him, he still has some level of work to do. But the Zohar explains that a tzaddik v'raloi, his evil nature is completely subservient to the good. So it doesn't mean that he acts out in any way. Doesn't mean that he sins in any way. His evil is completely nullified by the good. The Gemara says, "Better cast the brachas. Tzaddik yitzatov sheftan, Rishoyim yitzatov sheftan." The Gemara says that sheftan literally means to be judged. So we could say that the tzaddik v'toiv lo, tzaddikim, generally speaking, they are controlled by the good. That's the direction. And with Rishoyim, it's the opposite. Ubeinini, zev sheftan. When you're a good person, you wake up every day with good intentions, but you always have the Yetzer Hara trying to pick at you, and the Yetzer Tov trying to pick at you. So they're judged by both. Sometimes, and they get in a bad mood, it goes to the left, let's say, and they're in a good mood, and they try to, allow the Yetzer Tov to dominate. So they go that direction. That's a Beinoni. He's in the middle, but he could sort of lean each direction at any given time. Amar Rabba, going ano Beinoni. And Rabba says, I'm a Beinoni. Amar le Abaye, le Shavik Beimar, le Shavik Mar Chayvet Dechol Beria. He says, Master, you make it possible for everyone else. If you, Rabba says, if you, Rabba, say that you're a Beinoni, then all the other people that are trying so hard, they're going to say, if Rabba's a Beinoni, I'm for sure a Rasha. I got no chance. I got no hope. Lahavin kol ma ber hetiv. So let's understand why he said this. Why did he mistake himself to be a Beinoni? So he says, if a Beinoni is simply one having half mitzvahs, half avedas, then obviously it's not Rabbah. But we have to understand and dissect and really clarify what it means to be a Beinoni. And furthermore, we have to understand what Eov said. He said, you've created righteous men and you've created wicked men. Paul, can I ask you a huge favor? Can you make me a tea? I'm not going to make it through, I don't think. Thank you. So Eov says, Eibishter, you've created righteous men and you created wicked men. But tzaddik v'rasha like Kamar, he does not decree which person ought to be righteous and wicked. So the Gemara relates that God decrees that a child about to be born, it's already decided whether he's going to be wise, foolish, strong, or weak. However, whether the child will be righteous or wicked, Hashem doesn't say. This is not predetermined, rather it's left to the individual's free choice. Now, you want to twist your mind a little bit, Hashem knows what choice you're going to make, but he doesn't decide for you. He decides how tall you're going to be, how strong-willed you're going to be, but it could be in the good or in the wicked when it comes to strong-willed. You could be a stubborn, obstinate, and nasty, rude, obnoxious, or you could be incredibly kind and stand up for what's right. So how then are we to understand Eov's message of you have created wicked righteous men and created wicked men? I thought David still lets you decide on your own. We also have to understand the essential nature of the rank of the Beinoni and also of that of a tzaddik and that of a wicked man. What's the essential nature? And can we change our nature? If there's an essential nature of a Beinoni or a Rasha, and we feel like we're in a certain category, how do I graduate and leave that category? Can I change my essential nature? So we're not talking about somebody who has half sins and half virtues, does half the time good and half the time bad. That's not a Beinoni. And if that's the case, how could Rabba make a mistake and say that he's a Beinoni? It's known that Rabba was such a holy person. He was always learning or davening or doing a mitzvah. Thank you so much. So much so. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh my gosh. What a difference. Let's see what happens. Oh, wow. Amazing. Paul, you're Machai Nefesh here. Thank you. So it says that his mouth never ceased from studying Torah, so much so that the angel of death was not able to get to him. He had to trick him into stopping to learn for a moment so he could take him away. How can we say that a Beinoni is half mitzvahs and half sins? Rabba was never sinning. Furthermore, if a person can't be considered a Beinoni if he's doing half sins. For the minute a person sins, until he does tshuva, he's a rasha. You're doing a terrible sin on purpose. If a person does tshuva after nikra tzadik, so if he does complete tshuva and he only does his mitzvahs from there on in, then he's a tzaddik. So what is a Beinoni? So we're not even talking about somebody who does minor things. And he says, generally speaking, I do this, but this, I can't do this so much. So this, I'm a little weak in this area. No, that's not a Beinoni. Moreover, even he who himself does not sin, but has the opportunity to stop somebody else from sinning. A good friend, you have to be very careful. You can't just go up to people and say, hey, stop eating that. You're not allowed to eat that. Stop doing that. Can't do that. It has to be a very good friend. It has to be somebody who knows that you have his best interest in mind. And then you can put yourself in his shoes and you know that he's going to listen to you. There's a lot of criteria before you tell somebody off. Right, Paul? By the way, and we're going to discuss this in Tanya, that we think a prohibition, doing an aveir is a bad thing. Neglecting to do a positive mitzvah is even worse. Whoever has the ability to study Torah and he just says, I'd rather scroll on my phone. Shalav darshu Rabbi Zechariah Livracha kidvar Hashem baza begomer tikaris. If you waste time when you have an opportunity to learn, our sages have applied the pasuk because he has despised the world of Hashem or the word of Hashem, meaning the Torah. That soul should be cut off. It's terrible. So obviously we have to take advantage of every moment. And it's thus plain that such a person is called wicked, even more so than someone who violates an Isur D'Rabbanan. And that's a big statement. You miss doing a mitzvah is even more, it's worse than doing an Isur D'Rabbanan. A sin most difficult to avoid and countless among those sins that people transgress daily. Okay. So we see if you miss an opportunity to mitzvah, somebody needed help, but he was busy studying, didn't help the guy, or he's davening and he's like, oh, maybe I should rush to learn. I'm eating, I gotta eat. So maybe I could have been learning instead of eating. You could start making these chesbonos and say, listen, I know I'm doing everything I can, but I'm sure I missed some mitzvahs here and there. I'm probably not a Beinani. That's the way Rabbah viewed it. And we as outsiders, according to what we're learning, Rabbah was not correct because he was constantly studying Torah to the point that the Malach HaMavis had a hard time taking him. So since a Beinani is innocent even from neglecting Torah study even for a moment, Rabbah could be mistakenly consider himself a Beinani, even though he was very careful in all the mitzvahs. There's a footnote here that says, Ine, I'm sorry, Hagar. Ashikosim Zerech Ele Gimel, Daf Reish Lamed Aleph, Kol Shem Mu'atin, Aveinaisav Chulu. It's written in the Zohar that he whose sins are few is classed as righteous man who suffers, implying that even according to the Zohar, the meaning of a righteous man who suffers is one who does have sins, albeit few. And if so, a Beinani must be one who is in part virtuous and part sinful. He she'elas Rav Hamnuna Deliyahu. This is what Rav Hamnuna Deliyahu asked. But according to Eliyahu's answer, the meaning of a righteous man who suffers, as stated in Rai Mahemna, when Parshas Mishpatim quoted above, that the righteous man who suffers is one whose evil nature is subservient to his good nature. That is the Tzadik V'Raloi. The Shivim Panim L'Torah, and the Torah has 70 faces, modes of interpretation. I'll take a look in a minute. So the Rebbe notes that the words and the Torah has 70 facets, helps us understand Rav Hamnuna's question. It's difficult to understand how Rav Hamnuna would even entertain the notion that a righteous man who suffers is one who actually sins. Inasmuch as all the above mentioned questions clearly lead us to assume that the exact opposite. Rav Hamnuna's question was prompted only by the fact that the Torah has 70 facets, and he thought that this was possibly one facet, but the ultimate answer is that it isn't. So now, depending on how I view myself, I will either be happy or depressed. Who am I? Tanya will give us a better understanding of who we truly are. What can be said and said for your and what can be said and said for your achievable goals? Like we like to say in our class, Halavai Beinani, Halavai, I could live up to this level of Rabbah that I'm constantly learning and constantly serving Hashem in order to reach that level of a Beinani. Tomorrow on Shabbos morning, we're going to continue and try to figure out what exactly this Beinani is, this level of Beinani. Okay, that's it for today, Chavra. Sei gesund, have an amazing, incredible day, and a good Shabbos Kodesh.